All right, welcome everyone. Hello, it's so nice to get to connect with you all virtually today. Welcome to the January admission panel for admitted students and families. I'm Niki Barron. I'm an Associate Dean of Admission. I'm also a Hamilton College alum, and I also coordinate our January admission program. Congratulations to all of you on your recent admission to Hamilton. We are so excited to get to welcome you to our community. I'll be your moderator for this evening's program, and I'm really excited and lucky to be joined by 3 members of our campus community. So our goal this evening is to share our insight into the Hamilton community, especially from the perspective of the January admission experience with all of you as you're considering the January program here at Hamilton. I'm joined this evening by Tessa Chefalo, who's our Assistant Dean of Students for Student Engagement, and also 2 of our students, Maeve and Thomas. And I'm actually going to turn it over to our panelists so that they can introduce themselves to you.
Hi, my name's Thomas Kuhn. I am a member of the class of 2024, so I'm a junior. I'm from Yarmouth, Maine. Not sure if any of you are from Maine out there, but if you are, that's awesome. I'm a government major, and I spent my Jan semester that fall working on a senatorial campaign in Maine. I worked for Sarah Gideon, and I nannied, and I also took some courses at a local community college, just to kind of make sure that I was up on credits and such. And on campus, I am a member of the executive board of Hamilton Democrats. I'm a tour guide, and I am also an avid club soccer player.
And Thomas, where are you currently?
I am currently in Dublin, Ireland.
Great.
Yeah, studying abroad for the term right now. Yeah, it's lovely. It's beautiful.
Great.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maeve. I am a senior. I'm originally from Saratoga, New York, so not too far from campus. I am a literature major with a Hispanic Studies and Government double minor. I spent my first fall semester in London, actually, with the Arcadia program. And on campus, I am a radio host with WHCL. I work for the Alumni Relations Office. I'm the class management team lead, so we plan the reunions. And I'm also an orientation leader. I led for January orientation as well as August orientation for 2 summers.
That's great. And Maeve, where are you currently?
I'm on campus. I'm in Millbank.
Hi, I am Tessa Chefalo. I'm Assistant Dean of Students for Student Engagement at Hamilton. I, in that role, work really closely with a number of programs on campus. I oversee our orientation for new students, and that includes both our on-campus orientation, our January orientation, and then our orientation trips. Maeve led one of them, worked actually very closely with one of our trip branches last year called Exploration Adventure. So in addition to doing orientation programming, I also do a program during the academic year called the First Year Experience. That's really a programming series and engagement series for our new students. So we host kind of fun social events, off-campus trips for first-year students, panels and resources on things like how to register for classes, how to get a job on campus, some of those basics that can be kind of tricky to navigate at the beginning. So the first year experience and the student leaders are there to be a support system. And then I also work really closely with our student activities office here on campus. So I'm pretty involved in a lot of the engagement and kind of evening and weekend programming you'll see across campus, and happy to answer questions about that today. And I really enjoy my work, especially working with first year students, which has been the biggest part of my job since I started at Hamilton 9 years ago, because I love the transition experience. I think there's so much excitement and newness and just a really big mix of emotions. And for me, it's really fun to work with students who are in that process, right? Who are starting to kind of figure out who they're going to be in this new place, make new connections, learn more about themselves and their interests and skill sets. That's really energizing to me. And so that's certainly one of the main reasons I have stayed at Hamilton this long, and I'm excited to be here tonight to hear from Maeve and Thomas about their experiences, but also get to hopefully answer questions that you all have about what that transition might look like.
Great. Well, thank you to all of you for being here, and thank you for sharing your experience as JANs and your perspective with the JAN program with our admitted students this evening. So we're going to start a little bit by talking about the admission process for the January admission program. And just a little bit of background about this JAN program. It has existed here at Hamilton for more than 20 years. So it's a pretty well-established, well-developed program. Each year we bring in between 40 and 45 first-year students that join our community in the spring semester. That's what we anticipate for the class of 2027, that there will be between 40 and 45 JANs in the class of 2027. JANs are typically students who are really out of the box thinkers, who are really excited to do something different in the fall before they arrive to college. They then arrive and really hit the ground running as they are really well integrated in our Hamilton community. They get to know other JANs, they get to know other first year students when they arrive. But it's really exciting because the whole campus community is so excited to welcome the JANs whenever they arrive. It's a fresh new set of faces that arrive in the middle of winter and infuse the greatest amount of energy into our community, because they've done some really interesting things in the fall, and we get really excited to learn about their fall experiences. But also they've been thinking about Hamilton for a really long time. So they're really excited to get started with their Hamilton experience. So I think the JAN program is really an exciting opportunity for students to do something that they've always wanted to do in the fall, but had never before had such a large amount of time to be able to pursue, and have sort of a gap semester experience before starting college and joining the Hamilton community. But I'm going to turn this next question to Maeve and Thomas so that our audience this evening can hear a little bit more about the current student perspective. So Maeve and Thomas, these students recently learned about their January admission to Hamilton. Many of them may have some initial questions, some reactions to that news. And so what was your reaction when you first learned that you were admitted as a JAN? And what did you do to learn more about the January admission program and specifically about your admission to Hamilton?
I remember feeling really excited. Hamilton was my first choice school, so I was really just amped to get in and do whatever with my fall. But I actually expressed interest in the JAM program. I remember from my interview that I had with the college when I was still applying. So I knew I'm in the minority in that I knew a little bit more than other students might at this point. But to learn more about my admission, I knew of one student, like really loosely, our like parents knew each other. So I reached out to him and I asked him about his experience. He was just a year older. And he had a really good, time with his fall. He was in the London program as well. And so that just kind of solidified the thought for me. But there also are a lot of resources online that I remember reading about. So I had a sufficient amount of understanding about it from the start, but I definitely went online and talked to current students to learn more.
I also kind of had a similar experience with a mutual friend who was a JAN a bit older than me. One of my sister's best friends from high school was actually a JAN who graduated when I was a freshman. So she graduated in 2021. So I'd kind of talked to her when I was applying to Hamilton about what her experience was like, what that experience was assimilating to Hamilton as someone who came in a semester late. And I was really thrilled about what I heard. She spoke glowingly of the JAN program and her time in London. I knew that it was an election year, and I'm definitely kind of a political science nerd, government nerd. So I was really excited about the possibility of getting to take some time off and work on some really important campaigns. And COVID happened and everything was just kind of up in the air for a bit there. So having that time off was really perfect. And I did some reading online on Hamilton's website, and I guess just reached out to other contacts that I made through Ella, and just the Hamilton community is very open. There are a ton of resources available to you. So I sent a few emails and was really just kind of excited.
Great. Thomas, that's actually a really nice transition to our next topic, which is about the fall semester before coming to Hamilton. I think the admitted JANs who are on this evening might already be thinking about how they plan to spend the fall before they come to Hamilton. And so to both of you, Maeve and Thomas, how did you research the fall options? How did you look at the different experiences? What were you looking for in your fall experience before coming to Hamilton? And how did you vet your fall options?
So kind of,
Go first.
oh, sorry, my bad, Maeve. So kind of as I was saying before, I was definitely excited about the prospect of getting to do some like hands-on electoral work. So that was something that I really like narrowed in on. But I really like, seriously considered Arcadia, but it was a pandemic. I was a bit nervous about flying across the Atlantic and being like away from my family for the first time in the middle of a pandemic and like uncertainty about travel. So that was kind of set aside. So I spent some time communicating with the registrar's office about how I can make up those credits when I was not like taking classes as you do at Arcadia. So I found a local community college that had suitable courses to transfer into Hamilton. Decided to take a few interesting classes that I think were pretty useful. Looking back on it now, anthropology, I've discovered that I really like anthro during that time period. And I guess I was just kind of content with being at home and pursuing a passion.
I think for me, Arcadia, the London program is definitely the one that the most students go to. And that was something that I was interested in. I really found it important to meet as many new students as possible. I think one of my biggest anxieties going into college was the idea of like meeting new people and having to, I didn't know anybody from my high school who was coming here. So it definitely felt like a bit of a daunting transition. So I wanted to go on a program where I would meet as many new students as possible and have the highest chance, I guess, of like meeting people who I would be friends with for the next 4 years. But I do wonder sometimes, I loved my experience with London and like I wouldn't change it, but I wonder if I would have been interested in other programs if I'd researched them more. There are a lot of really interesting options like the C semester. Where sometimes I wonder if I didn't prioritize meeting other people and looked at the programs, themselves, like maybe things would have been different, but also at the same time, like I loved the program that I chose and I really loved London specifically. So that was really fun to find out. And yeah, I guess just looking at a lot of the resources that are on the Jan admin section of our website was really helpful to me.
So some of our Jans don't want to spend the fall away from home. Thomas, this was your experience of some Jans choose to stay close to home and not travel. And it is completely fine to not travel, stay close to home, strengthen your relationships with family, have an internship, maybe have a job, save some money for college. And so I think what's so exciting about the Jan program is that each Jan gets to choose the fall experience that they feel will be the best fit for them in their fall semester before they come to Hamilton. There is no one prescribed path that every Jan does. There are no requirements of how they spend the fall. And so it's really exciting to see how Jans choose to spend the fall based on the experience that they feel will be the best fit. So Thomas, turning this question to you, since you didn't do one of our partner programs, how have you worked on catching up on academic credits to get on track to graduate on time? Was this tough? Was it difficult, challenging? Did you feel like you were behind? Did it cut into your ability to do summer internships or study abroad, which you're currently doing this semester?
Yeah, no, I'm in Dublin at Trinity College right now, so clearly it didn't cut into my ability to study abroad. Summer internships have been manageable. I communicated a lot with the registrar's office about how many credits I needed to make up. It's 4, it's pretty simple, it's a semester's worth at Hamilton. And I kind of mapped out how I was going to get that done over the next 4 years, because you have 4 years to make up those credits. And I took 4 summer classes and I've taken a guitar lesson and now I'm set with credit. So it's really not a difficult process. And the people at Hamilton whose job it is to kind of make sure every student graduates are really good at kind of staying on top of you and making sure that you're getting that done. And yeah, I'm really pleased with my decision to kind of take that time off. And AP credits are also pretty useful if you have APs offered at your high school.
So to Maeve and Thomas, can you talk a little bit about whether you met other Hamilton students during your fall semester before arriving at Hamilton?
Yeah, I definitely met a good amount. There are about, I think there were between 30 and 40 in my year. I don't remember the exact number, but 30 something. And it definitely was really nice because it was a wide variety of students. Like a lot of them, I don't think we would have like crossed paths if we weren't both Jans, just because we study different things and we're involved in different things on campus. So that was, I think, definitely one of my favorite parts about the program that I chose was, you know, meeting other Hamilton students. And also when you go to London, there are students from other schools that you get to meet as well. So I definitely really like the social aspects of the program that I chose.
I didn't physically meet really anyone. One of my freshman year roommate had like a summer camp in Maine. And that's a privilege that only Jans get to actually have. You can choose your roommate. So I met him very like briefly, COVID safely, during the summer of 2020. But I really didn't meet many other Hamilton students before I got to campus, but still have a really good community. So it's not the end of the world.
And Maeve and Thomas, what were the things that, or what were the best things that you took away from your fall experience before coming to Hamilton?
I think for me, being abroad, it definitely is an intense transition, like going from high school and then just being kind of like plopped in London as an 18-year-old was like a little crazy, and definitely crazy to look back on now that I'm like 22. But I think that it helped me get a certain sense of independence that I don't think would have developed as quickly or as effectively if I had started on campus in the fall. For example, like when you're in London, you're responsible for like feeding yourself. There isn't a meal plan. And also commuting into the city. I had like a 30 to 40 minute commute on the tube into the city center where my classes were. And so the time management that came out of that is something that I don't think would develop the same way here, where like you're on the unlimited meal plan as a first year and the longest commute you might have is like a 15-minute walk. And that's like if you're strolling. So I think definitely a sense of independence. And I found that really helped me when I came back, especially with balancing like a heavier course load. Because that's kind of the trade-off. I think when you're abroad, like the course load is a little bit different than it would be at Hamilton, but then there's more responsibility in like feeding yourself and getting into the city and exploring the city and all of that. And then here it's like the course load is a little bit heavier, but like it's more relaxed in terms of like taking care of yourself. So that was a takeaway that I really value.
I would say kind of similarly, a bit like obviously a bit different considering like my circumstances, but independence and kind of like organizational skills and self-motivation, not having any structure after having 13 years of like every single minute accounted for is a bit of a transition. Having an internship was helpful because I needed to show up to that virtually every day. But I think gaining a sense of like self-capability, I suppose that's probably the best way to phrase it. I like realized that I was capable of kind of acting as an adult. I mean, 18, you're still kind of a kid, but I definitely felt like I grew up a lot during that semester, and I was really disorganized in high school. And I think having that time to get a routine that worked for me was super helpful coming into Hamilton in the fall or winter, January, after the fall.
Great. So we're going to turn now to orientation and arriving to Hamilton, transitioning to Hamilton. And I think a common question that we sometimes get from incoming Jans is whether Hamilton is in touch with you during the fall, before you arrive. And the answer to that is yes. So for all of our enrolled Jans, you will receive information from us in the admission office soon into the summer, probably early June or so. You will hear from us as we ask all of our incoming Jans how you plan to spend the fall. We want to know what you've chosen to do. And so we ask for that information back by July 1st. We also ask all of our incoming Jans to sign what we call the January enrollment agreement with some bullet points of what you're agreeing to in terms of the fall before you arrive to Hamilton. So we give you until July 1st to respond to that. And the reason why we are collecting this information is because we do keep track of what you're up to in the fall, because we are still in touch with you. We are communicating with you regularly in the fall. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Tessa now so that she can share her perspective, because Tessa works a lot with our incoming Jans and making sure that everyone feels connected to each other in the fall before they even arrive.
Yeah, so I want to echo Niki in saying, yes, there's a lot of communication that will come from the college to our Jans from the point of depositing all the way through the time that you arrive on campus. It kind of ebbs and flows depending on the time of year and what's going on for the Jans. So in May, once the deposit deadline has passed on May 1, students will start to hear from me. I'm going to send out some information, including your Hamilton email account, which is always fun to kind of set up for the first time. And then after that, one of the first pieces of information you would get would be an invitation to participate in our August orientation trips. So all of our Jans have the option to come to campus in August to join one of our trips. They are outreach adventure, exploration adventure, and Adirondack adventure. So depending on the trip branch, they go off into the wilderness to hike or canoe or kayak. You might do community service locally, things like working with some of the youth in the area or our refugee populations or working with libraries. Some of our trips do themed activities like yoga or music production, things like that. And so you'd be invited to participate in those. I'll probably talk about them a little bit more later, but they are a great way to form some early connections, not only with fellow Jans, but also with fellow first-year students at Hamilton. So you would get that information from me, an invitation to sign up. And then if you choose not to participate, that's okay. You would hear a little bit less from us during the summer. If you do participate, you'll get more information about what to expect when you come in August. But then as the fall semester approaches, you will start to receive more information from the college, and that includes information to kind of get you started on thinking about coming to campus in the spring. We send information during the fall semester that helps you to register for courses. You'll have a connection to your Alex advisor on campus, which is a program that we have where all of our new students have an advisor who can talk to you about anything, really, right? They're there to guide you in kind of planning some of your academics, but they're also there to talk to you about your engagement on campus, talk to you about your goals, so students can set up personalized appointments with them during the fall before you arrive on campus if you want to. There are also a lot of other ways to start getting engaged during this time period. So you will receive a Jan mentor before you come in. So that's an upper class Jan student who is there to kind of answer all your questions about what to expect. Like, what do I pack when I come to campus in early January? Or, how did you get engaged and kind of connected to students in your first few weeks on campus? I know some students also like to share experiences based on what they're doing in the fall semester too. So that's a nice feature. And then we have also done some other occasionally Zooms for Jans if there's questions during the fall semester, sometimes even in the summer. So all of those are options too. There's kind of an ample number of ways to get connected and ask questions and find information to whatever question you might have about coming to campus. And then of course, you will hear a lot from us as the spring semester approaches and we prepare for January orientation. And I think both Maeve and Thomas have been January orientation leaders now, in addition to participating in it as new students, and can talk a little bit about that if there are questions. But those leaders are an incredible resource for our incoming Jans, right? They're so enthused. They're almost always Jans who graduated the year before. They're really excited to welcome you to campus and kind of give you all of their behind the scenes tips and tricks. And I think something that's always really fun to see is how well connected and involved the Jans from the previous year are, even though they've only been on campus 1 year. So they're a great group of people to say, if you're interested in joining a club or organization or getting a job, they might be in that group, or if not, they're going to know someone who's in it. And so they're a really nice transitional leadership group. Does that cover the basics, Niki? Was there anything else you wanted me to cover? Oh.
That was great. So turning to Maeve, did you attend orientation when you were an incoming student? Did you come to the fall orientation program? And if you did, would you recommend that our incoming Jans consider coming back or coming to Hamilton for fall orientation?
Yeah, so I did participate in the August orientation program. I was on the journalism trip in my participant year. And obviously, I loved it enough to apply to be a leader, and then also work with Tessa as like the intern for the program over the summer. So I'm a fan of it, but I definitely recommend it either way, just because it's so nice to meet a whole group of students who won't, because we try to like split up the Jans so that they have the chance to meet other students before going abroad. And so it's really nice to feel like there's a group of people that you can come back to. And also just, I think something that I really love about Hamilton is like the way that we build community here. And I think that the move-in day is such a big, like really fun event that I wouldn't trade for anything. Driving up the hill and seeing everybody like shake signs at you and like yell as you're driving in your car is really fun. And so I definitely recommend doing that. And I definitely think that, there are some parts of it that are difficult. Like I think being on it, I was the only Jan on my trip. And so knowing that I had to go abroad when everybody was able to like fully move into their room that they're going to stay in for the year and, stick with the group of friends that we made on the trip, like that was difficult, but it only was for 3 months that I was away and I was able to come back and be friends with them anyway. So I definitely think that it's a very valuable experience that I would recommend participating in.
Great. And Thomas, I know you were starting at Hamilton in the COVID year when unfortunately Jans weren't able to participate in fall orientation. But Thomas, can you talk a little bit about how starting a semester later than students who started in the fall impacted your social life? Was it easy or hard to integrate into the social scene halfway through the academic year? Did it feel like everyone on campus already knew each other? How did the social transition work for you?
It was way easier than I was expecting. That was one of the things that I was really nervous about. But I think freshman year friendships are very fluid, and I think every year friendships are fluid and everyone's really open at Hamilton, which is great. But especially freshman year, everyone wants to meet everyone. And as a Jan, you live in Dunham, which is kind of like the mecca of first year housing. Everyone's there. It's crazy. It's lovely. I miss my time there. So just like walking around that building, I made some of my best friends on campus to date, or they're not on campus now, but some of my best friends to date. Club fair, although it was virtual, was very helpful. I made some really good connections doing that. Classes were also really nice. People are very friendly. They're curious about new faces showing up. So people were very open to getting to know me, which was really nice. And yeah, I would say living in Dunham is probably like what makes that transition so easy, because everyone is kind of active in Dunham, which is really fun.
Great. So Tessa, I know one of these questions has also arrived in the Q&A, and that is about housing. How do Jans get assigned housing, and are Jan roommates random? And when do Jans receive their housing information?
Yes, all great questions. So our January admission students will register for housing or submit their housing questionnaire in the fall semester before they arrive on campus. And the questionnaire is an online tool where you will put in a lot of information about yourself, your interests, your kind of needs around housing. So it could even be things like, do you like to sleep in late or wake up really early? Do you like to keep your space really neat or not so much? It will ask you a little bit about just your personal interests too, right? Are you interested in athletics on campus? What do you want to study? What are some of your hobbies? And so that questionnaire is often used to pair students with a roommate and also with housing on campus. However, for the January admission students, it's a little bit different in that you have the option to indicate a roommate preference. None of our other first year students are able to do this when they come into the fall. It's just our Jans. And partially that's because we know that Jans have often formed connections with fellow students. And I will say that, of course, it might be easy to think, oh, that only happens in London. I have seen it not happen in London. I've seen Jans who come on an orientation trip, and the next week, one of them might be off to sea semester, another one is to London, and I get emails from both of them like, we have to live together. We became best friends last week. But I think they also connect in a lot of other ways, right? So through various sessions hosted by Hamilton, through email communication, through back and forth with some of our current Jans, Jans who are upperclass students. So there are a lot of ways to forge those relationships, even if you don't come to August orientation, for example. And so you can, when you register for housing in the fall, indicate a preference. So I would say, I met Maeve, I want to live with Maeve in the fall, and you can include that. And our residential life office does take that into account and is very often able to honor that. So you might, in some cases, be able to pick your roommate or more than one roommate. In terms of locations, Thomas is right. It is relatively, it's almost always Dunham, but we do have a couple of other first year spaces. So when Res Life is housing students, they're going to, of course, look for your interests and kind of matching your needs and housing style the best. But they're also definitely going to put you in a first year building with other first year students and almost entirely with new Jans, at least as your roommate, if not the same people on your floor, right? So it's not totally random. It's really based on the need that, your needs and also some of the connections you might have already made. In terms of when you would get that assignment, you'd fill out the questionnaire probably in October, and you should know by the middle of December what your housing assignment is on campus and who your roommate or roommates are.
That's great. And I think along those lines, sometimes we get questions often from incoming Jans about spring semester course registration. How do Jans register for classes for the spring semester? And do they have advising opportunities to figure out what they're going to take in their first semester here?
Yeah, in some ways that's similar to housing in that it's an online process. And this is a process that all of our first year students do, right? But before the semester they come in. So if a student is starting in the fall, they'd be completing these same steps online in the summer. So we have what's called our advising tour that is going to be sent out around the same time in October. And it's a really robust online tool that tells you all sorts of things about Hamilton's curriculum, but it also is sort of a reflective activity. It lets you explore options that exist on campus in Hamilton's curriculum. It kind of gives you some prompts to think about your own academic goals and maybe career goals if that's related to what you want to study. And then at the end, you will put in your course preferences, right? So you kind of get to create a sample schedule of courses that are available in your first semester on campus, where you're looking even at, do I like to wake up early? Maybe I don't want an 8 a.m. class if that's not me. But also, how can I create a schedule that feels really balanced and is going to work for me in terms of the things I want to do, but also my own study habits. So the advising tour guides you through that entire process. You'd put in your ideal schedule at the end, but then you're going to put in some alternates, right? Some other things that you might be interested in as well. I think you get to input at least 12 courses total. Now, while that process is online and you're going to kind of do it independently, that doesn't mean you don't have resources at Hamilton to help you with that. I am one of them for sure, but also Ann Riffle, who works in our registrar's office, which is the office that does the actual kind of creation of the schedule for students. She is a fantastic resource. She works really closely with all of our first year students. And if she doesn't know the answer, can pretty much always find you the answer, right? So if you're looking for advising, even in a particular department, or if you have credits that you got somewhere else in the fall semester, whether that's Arcadia or elsewhere, C semester, you took classes on your own, and can really help students to figure out, okay, have I met the prerequisites for a certain course, or I'd like to understand how the class I took will transfer in, or what I should take next, what's your advice, and can really help students navigate that. We also have our Associate Dean of Students for Academics, who is a faculty member and a great resource for Jans as they transition in and are thinking about crafting their own schedules. And then we have the ALEX advisors, who I mentioned earlier, who are holistic advisors, and they are, each student is assigned an ALEX advisor. So once you are working on these processes in the fall, you will have your own assigned advisor. They can set up a Zoom call with you. You can email back and forth with them. They're really there to help you understand the advising tour and your options and make decisions. And then one last thing I'll mention is that, of course, all of our students have a faculty advisor, so a member of the faculty who teaches courses. In many cases, that person will be assigned to you after you've registered, because it will typically be someone who's teaching one of your courses in your first semester, which is a really great way to actually get to know them, right? It's not just somebody who you never run into on campus, but it's someone who you're going to be in the classroom with pretty much every week in your first semester on campus. So while you don't get assigned that advisor until after you've registered, they are another great resource. And I'll also note that once your course schedule, once you complete the advising tour and your course schedule is sent to you, which is usually in December, it doesn't mean it's permanent. You can change it. You can change it before you come to campus. You can meet with your advisor during orientation and make changes to it then. You can make changes to it during the drop add period, the first 2 weeks of campus. And I just note that because I know some people are worried about what feels like a very permanent schedule without a chance to actually get to know Hamilton or talk to an advisor in person, face to face. And so there are opportunities to make changes as you learn more about Hamilton, you start to think more about your own needs, and you have a chance to go back and forth with some of these advisors.
Great, thank you. Thomas referenced this a little while ago about the club fair, which I think is another way for incoming JANs to really integrate within our campus community. And so Tessa, can you talk a little bit about how JANs join clubs when they first arrive on campus?
Yeah, so we host, by we, I mean the Student Activities Office, we host a club fair every semester at the start of every semester. And so there's one in January. It's usually the first Friday after classes begin. And it is extremely popular, and not just with our new JANs and not even just with our first year students, but with students of varying class years. I see a lot of sophomores attend, juniors, and students who are just looking for a new way to get involved or maybe haven't found their fit quite yet. So that's one great opportunity. What this event is, you probably attended something similar to it, but it's a big event that we have in one of our largest spaces on campus. All of our student organizations come out to table, they make fun posters, they sometimes perform if that's part of what they do. And so you can go to this event and walk around and get to meet students, put your name on lists and sign up to learn more about some of the student organizations that are on campus or attend their event. That's one really great way to get involved. And I would also say that talking to your leaders is another great way to get involved, whether that's an August orientation, your January orientation mentor, or your January orientation leader. We will talk a lot about that during January orientation, about what opportunities exist on campus, and the upperclass JANs are a great way to forge those connections, right? They can walk over and say, oh, here's my friend Niki, who is in, another club, like plays volleyball on campus. If that's something you want to do, you can join that. So even if they don't play a sport or they're not in an activity, they're a great way to make that connection.
So let's turn now to spending 3.5 years at Hamilton and graduating on time. So this is a question that has come in the Q&A. It's also a really common question that we often get, which is, do most JANs graduate on time? Do they graduate with their class? And the answer to that question is yes. Most JANs do graduate on time with their class after arriving at Hamilton after 7 semesters, 3.5 years. And JANs do this in a combination of different ways. So if your fall experience is a credit-bearing experience, you can earn credit by participating in any of our 3 partner programs, which are School for Field Studies, Sea Education Association, or Arcadia University's program in London. Or you can take classes on another college campus closer to your hometown and then work with our registrar's office to transfer those credits to Hamilton. Those would be fall experiences where you could earn credit. Some JANs choose not to earn credit during the fall experience before they arrive, and then they work on making up the credits during their 7 semesters or 3.5 years at Hamilton. And that making up those credits is usually done in a combination of ways, but it's usually done through if you're eligible for advanced placement credit for AP tests that you might have taken during your time in high school, you could be eligible for credit for those. Sometimes JANs will take summer courses, summer college classes on other college or university campuses and then transfer those to Hamilton. And sometimes JANs will take extra classes. Our typical course load is 4 classes per semester. Sometimes JANs take 5 classes in a semester and earn the extra credit that way. So the answer is yes, most JANs do graduate on time. And it really just depends on how they've chosen to spend their fall and then how they work on making up those credits if they're doing non-credit experiences in the fall. But Maeve, I want to turn this question to you. Do you feel rushed to graduate with just 3.5 years on campus?
I really don't. I feel very good about the amount of time that I spent here. And when you think about it too, there are like a lot of juniors who go abroad, like most people do end up going abroad. So a lot of people end up spending 3.5 years on campus. It's just like when you take that semester away. So I definitely don't feel rushed. yeah, I feel I feel good about the amount of time that I've spent. I'm sad to go, but it doesn't feel like I've lost anything at all.
Great. So I can see a couple of questions that have come in the Q&A. So I think we're going to turn to some questions here in the Q&A. One person asked about whether we can elaborate more on taking college classes during the fall semester and whether there are any limitations to those classes. Tessa, would you like to respond to that question?
Yes. So student and Thomas maybe can speak to this too if you explore this, but in terms of taking classes, one of my top pieces of advice is to start to talk to Hamilton early about that, if that's something you want to do. So it's absolutely possible. I have seen students every year take classes at a place other than one of our partner programs in their first fall. And I've also seen many students do things that are not taking, not credit bearing in the fall. And all of those are definitely workable options. And students can still graduate in the kind of traditional 4 years, or what would have been the 4 years. So in terms of taking classes locally, what I would say is reach out to, whether it's admissions or it can be me to start with, but our registrar's office is really going to be the top resource for you. And Niki or I can connect you to them. And the reason I mention this is because transfer credits into Hamilton are really dependent on what you're studying, where you're studying. And so the best thing to do is to talk to the college about where you want to take classes before you sign up for them. And certainly before you start to take them, if your goal is to have those credits transfer in. So we can work with you. The registrar's office can work with you. Sometimes a specific department can work with you to say, okay, this is what we will accept for credit. This is what it would look like, because there are a couple of distinctions there. One of them is getting credit, but one of them is also getting credit in a particular area, right? So if you're looking to gain credit in a science, that might look a little bit different than just coming in with 4 credits. But the sooner you start that conversation, the better. In some cases, the college might know off the bat. We might have had students who've already taken that course or studied at that institution. But in some cases, the Hamilton faculty might want to look at the syllabus for the class and be able to tell you precisely how it would transfer in. So it's definitely not impossible. I've seen students do it every year. It's just got this one additional step that I would suggest, which is making sure you're in touch as soon as possible so that you know what to expect and can make decisions accordingly.
So a common question has also come in the Q&A, which is whether JANs are paying fees to Hamilton in the fall semester. The answer to that question is no. So JANs are not considered enrolled Hamilton students until the spring semester starting in January, which means that JANs do not begin paying Hamilton tuition, room and board, and fees to Hamilton until the spring semester, which means that any fall experience that JANs choose to pursue, whether that's a partner program or taking other college or university classes, or not pursuing academic work in the fall, any fees associated with the fall experience are paid directly to the program or to the experience that the JANs choose to pursue in the fall semester. So another question in the Q&A, Thomas, I'm actually going to turn this to you. Do JANs typically go abroad their junior year, if JANs choose to go abroad?
Yeah, there are a ton of JANs in my year currently that are abroad right now. I don't know if that's abnormal because of COVID and everything, but there's definitely a history of JANs going abroad if they so choose to, their junior year. I mean, I'm really happy that I got this opportunity to go abroad, and I think I still would have, even if I went to London. I think it's really cool to explore, and you're only in college once, so why not get to experience kind of more of the world during that time? But it definitely is up to the student, I would say. But every year there are JANs that choose to go abroad. Yeah.
And just as a follow-up to that, I can see a second member of our audience this evening sent a similar question. But additionally, this admitted JAN is asking whether it would feel awkward or weird socially to not study abroad junior year.
Oh, I don't think so. There's still a great community that's on campus. I think something that's really lovely about Hamilton is that you're gonna have friends in every year. So even if like a few of your friends, like your core friend group, decides that they want to go abroad, you're still gonna have a really good community there for you and other social options available to you. I've heard from a lot of people actually that not going abroad during their junior year was great because they expanded their like social network at Hamilton like tenfold and made some friends that they probably wouldn't have made if they had not done so, if they had like not decided to stay. So I think there's definite benefits to staying on the Hill if that's not something you choose to do.
I didn't go abroad junior year. The reason for doing that was just because of COVID. I think if COVID didn't happen, then maybe I would have gone abroad. I was looking at like the Spain program, for example, but I never felt like that was awkward. There are like a good amount of people who stay too. And some people go abroad like in the fall too. So it's really up to you and what you're comfortable with. But not an awkward thing at all socially.
Speaking from my own experience from when I was a Hamilton student, I did not study abroad while I was a Hamilton student. And it was really because I was enjoying my time on campus so much that I didn't want to miss out on any semester on campus on the Hill. I feel like if Hamilton had been a 5-year experience, I probably would have studied abroad. But I also was attending Hamilton after growing up in California. And for me, it kind of felt like my abroad experience was being at Hamilton because it was so different from my hometown and from where I had grown up. And I did not feel like it was weird or awkward socially. It was really exciting to see my friends who studied abroad and hear their stories. But for me, it really was the best decision for me to not study abroad. So I think it's really a personal choice and what each individual student feels is the best fit for them in terms of their preferences or their comfort level or what they're interested in pursuing, whether they study abroad or not. I see a lot of questions in the Q&A that are specific to the Arcadia program in London. I just want to assure everyone that we're not going to be able to answer all of these specific questions about London. Thank you so much for submitting them. But unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to them this evening. And that is because we are going to offer another virtual program for our admitted JANs in just a couple of weeks, where we will actually have a representative from all 3 of our partner programs who will be online and available to answer all your specific questions about the partner program. So if you're able to sign on again on April 11th, please hold your questions until then, or you're also welcome to email them your specific questions directly. Another question I see in the Q&A, Tessa, I'm going to hand this off to you, is whether students can participate in both August orientation and January orientation.
Yes, you can. So January orientation is actually required for all of our JANs. You can also participate in August orientation. That is optional, but highly encouraged. And I would say in an average year, about maybe 80% or higher of our JANs choose to come in August for an orientation trip. So the key difference, though, that I want to kind of clarify, when you come in August, you'll be coming only for the trip portion. Our fall students who come in August will go on a trip and then come back to campus and do additional 3 days of on-campus orientation. The reason that our JANs don't stay for on-campus orientation in August is that's what you're going to do when you come back in January. And at that time, it'll be a lot more pertinent to your actual experience, right? You'll have your academic advisor, you'll be able to walk around campus and see where your classes are. And some of the on-campus programming is like presentations about campus resources and connections with faculty and staff. Now, there are options to connect with faculty and staff when you're a JAN that comes in August for our fuller trip program, but a lot of that on-campus programming is really not going to be that helpful to you if you stuck around for it in August, so that's why we hold off until January. So yes, like I said, I would say 80% or more of our JANs, in addition to participating in January orientation, come for a trip. And in addition to the trip itself, there are some special opportunities that we create at either end of the trip where you get to hear from people on campus about the JAN experience. There's often a lot of questions about the credits and what the fall semester will look like. There's a couple of social activities that are just for JANs, so you can meet fellow JANs who are there for trips and other JANs who are returning students and often orientation leaders too. So there's a lot built into that to make it a really robust experience in August. And one thing I'll also note, because I sometimes have questions about this, is that if you come in August, it's totally free to you to participate in August orientation as a JAN in the trips. You, of course, just have to get yourself to and from campus at the beginning and the end, but that's it. So there's no cost for the trip itself.
So Thomas and Maeve, I'd love to end with asking you to both share your experiences in why you chose to come to Hamilton and why you feel that the JAN program was the best fit for you.
I can start, I guess. I originally committed to Hamilton for a lot of like on paper reasons. Like I loved the open curriculum and the career network and alumni network and all of that. But then, once coming here too, I think one of the things that I love the most about Hamilton, like I mentioned earlier, is the community building. And you witness that from the very first day you arrive and move in on campus with orientation, and you experience that throughout your trip. But then also something that I've noticed just through working with alumni relations is that community still stands post-grad, and seeing all of the alumni come back and, meet up with all their friends and like go to the pub and do everything that they did while they were students on campus is really heartwarming. And it makes me feel, like a lot better about graduating, because I know that community still continues after leaving here. And also just like Hamilton students and alumni are so different than students and alumni at other colleges that I've heard about, in the sense that they're so ready to help you with career related things too, and even just like support you, in whatever way you like. If I've met like alumni, as I've been a student here, they're so excited to ask me about like where I lived and what I do on campus and like connect with me that way. And so I think that it's a really engaged community. And I would not trade that for anything else. I'm really glad that I ended up committing here.
Hard to follow that up, but I think I decided to come to Hamilton. I can envision the moment I was like, yes, I need to come here pretty clearly. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a big political science nerd. So when I got into the schools that I got into, I reached out to a ton of different professors kind of throughout the country, and just like wanted to communicate about what that experience looks like. There's only one school, there's only like one professor that got back to me, and it was my first advisor, Frank Anacarrico. He got back to me in like 3 hours, which is crazy because I sent that email at like 7 p.m. It was 10 p.m. and he was responding to a high school student. So I felt automatically like this is a place where I can go and establish real connections, not just with like friends, but also with faculty. And that's definitely been my experience at Hamilton. I have wonderful friends. I love them tons, but it's the relationships with professors that I think makes Hamilton so excellent, and other faculty kind of on campus. Not as good of an answer as Maeve, but that is definitely something that really like stands out to me, is why I decided to commit to spend 4 years in Clinton, New York. It's lovely.
Great, thank you. Well, unfortunately, we're going to need to wrap things up this evening, but thank you to all of you for signing on this evening and joining us and learning a little bit more about Hamilton and learning more about our January admission program. Thank you to Tessa, Maeve, and Thomas. My hope is that all of you who are here this evening learned a little bit more about Hamilton and about our JAN community. As I mentioned, we will hold another virtual event specifically for admitted JANs. That will be on Tuesday evening, April 11th at 7 o'clock Eastern time. You can learn more about the registration opportunities on our website for admitted students. And during this program on April 11th, we will actually have representatives from all 3 of our partner programs, from the School for Field Studies, Sea Education Association, and Arcadia University in London. They will be giving introductions and overviews about their programs, and they will also be available to answer all of your specific questions about these partner programs. They are all great fall experiences, and we look forward to having them and letting you get to learn a little bit more about these opportunities directly from our partners. So please don't hesitate to be in touch if you have any additional questions about Hamilton, about your admission after this evening. You'll also find our January website a helpful resource, and I'm actually going to put a link to our website here in the Zoom chat. So you are more than welcome to take a look at the JAN website to learn more about the experience. But congratulations again to all of you on your admission to Hamilton. Take care. Good luck as you are wrapping up your senior year and making your college decision. And we hope to see you at Hamilton next year.